Good. So now we are YouTubing live and recording this session live with Chris Sykes, who is in the UK. Thank you for being with us today on the live. Chris is going to be talking about the changing life of a lawyer, which I believe is very much inspired by his real life as a lawyer moving into the legal tech world. So let me introduce Chris for our audience member. He's an English solicitor from Manchester. He used to practice criminal law before moving to Spain, where he worked and taught the law. And eventually he decided to make a move and into the legal tech world. And this is how he moved to Hong Kong to start a company called Zegal, which was previously called Dragon Law, which is a platform for creating legal documents online. So he is going to be talking about his life today as a lawyer and now an entrepreneur. And as a live participant, you can interact with Chris using the little chat box right below the YouTube video. So feel free to ask questions and comment to Chris. And so we'll make this very interactive. Thank you again, Chris, for being here. And I look forward to hearing about your presentation.
Thanks very much, Tessa, and thanks for having me. Yes, if anyone would like to ask any questions while I'm doing this short talk, then please do. I always think it's more interesting when people pipe in with their questions or queries. But of course, after this, feel free to contact me directly, find me on LinkedIn, whatever. If there's anything that you think of after this session. Thanks again to Tessa for the kind introduction. Today I'm going to be talking about the changing life of a lawyer, and what I really mean by that is how the legal profession is changing, how what students are learning is changing, and I'm going to sort of tie that in with how my life as a lawyer has changed, as Tessa alluded to. I've gone from being a lawyer in practice to a teacher to a legal tech co-founder, and over this period I've had to learn a lot of different skills. I'm not a particularly technological person, or I certainly didn't used to be, and I've had to learn a lot about business, a lot about the legal tech industry, and that sort of thing. And hopefully I'm not going to talk for too long today, but hopefully you'll be able to get some insight into my journey and the journey of my business, and also what I think about the way lawyers' work is going to change, and the way junior lawyers and law students study the law is going to change. Welcome to everyone who's joining us. I understand there's quite a few law students from Paris who are joining us. Welcome to a wintry, cold Manchester on a Thursday night. I said to Tessa earlier that I was going to put on a suit, but I've decided to keep my appearance very startup with my usual scruffy appearance. So anyway, who am I? I'm a solicitor. I'm a qualified solicitor from England. I'm now a co-founder of a legal tech company called Zegal. And you can check out what we do online. If you go to www.zegal.com, you can sign up for a free trial and have a look at what our platform does. I don't really need to say any more about it, because you can just give it a go and let me know what you think. I'm very interested in legal technology. I'm very interested in legal education, and so these are the kind of areas I'm going to talk about today. So why did I pick the subject, changing life of a lawyer, or rather, what am I going to include in that subject? I'm going to talk a bit about my career and background, how life for lawyers in practice is changing, and how life and career is going to change for those studying law at the moment. Well, my career is relatively unusual, I think, for an English solicitor. I went to law school. I was very interested in litigation, and criminal litigation in particular, which you might argue is the most interesting area of law. I wanted to be a courtroom lawyer. I wanted to get involved in interesting cases. I wanted that excitement, and so I trained as a solicitor in that area, and ended up specialising in complex crime, regulatory and fraud type offences. Now that means I come from the most old-fashioned area of law. I come from an area of law where people wear wigs and robes and go to court and address the court formally, and so therefore it's been quite a transition going into the world of legal technology. But I have to say, I've no regrets. I then, as Tessa pointed out, I moved to Spain, where I used to teach law and various legal skills, and that's where I got my interest in legal education from. And while I was doing that, I stayed in touch with a colleague of mine, now the CEO of our business, Daniel Walker, who actually we'd studied law together. Now we always had and it's a good example of why you should stay in touch with people that you study with. And we'd always had the idea about creating a business that offered businesses the opportunity to do certain legal chores, certain legal create legal documents, simply and on their own without recourse to going to a law firm. So quickly and efficiently, and we managed to get some funding for this, and therefore we were able to build up a team, build up a large technology team, and build our software in-house. We're now based in 5 countries. I've recently moved back to the UK, where of course I'm from, to launch Zegal here. And the journey from our foundation in Hong Kong, in fact, to now 4 years later in the UK is quite an interesting one. And along the way, it's allowed me to encounter certain challenges presented by building a business around legal technology, and different opinions and attitudes around the law and the direction that the law in general is going. When we first started a few years ago in Hong Kong, I used to tell people that we were a legal tech business. Now, all of you on this call, I guess, understand what legal tech means, but in actual fact, at that stage, a lot of certainly a lot of businesses, but even a lot of solicitors, a lot of lawyers had never come across the expression before. A few years later, of course, it's widely recognised expression, but at the time, people were often surprised, and then they thought that maybe we were out to to take their jobs. People's attitude to technology often varies depending on the person. And what we've seen over time as we've grown is a growing acceptance across the board in the legal profession, a growing acceptance of the importance of technology, a growing interest in technology, especially from the larger firms who of course have more cash to spend, and more interest in legal tech from what I suppose I'd call non-lawyers and entrepreneurs across the board. Good example of this was we when we launched in Singapore, which was our second market. We did encounter the odd lawyer who would say, "Oh no, I don't like what you're doing. I think that law should remain very much something that's done by human beings all the time and by qualified solicitors." And then skip forward a few years, and recently the government, the Singapore Academy of Law, in fact, has launched what they call FLIP, which stands for, and I better get this right, the Future of Law Innovation Program, which is an accelerator for legal technology. It's well worth checking this out, but it basically shows that the Singapore government has decided that it wants to be the centre of legal technology in that region. And so therefore I find that, it's quite interesting that we landed in Singapore and nobody knew what legal tech meant. And now here we are with a government-backed accelerator that does nothing but promote it. I think that's quite interesting.
And talking about your journey from the UK, Spain, and Hong Kong, we have a comment/question considering your amazing path on those different continents. How do you think culture can slow down or maybe accelerate legal tech evolution?
Well, that's a good point. I think culture, or certainly culture in the legal industries around the world, is very different. I think we found that in Hong Kong, for example, the big law firms often have their headquarters in the States or in Britain, and so therefore those law firms and those lawyers were very open to technology. In fact, often they're building it themselves. Smaller law firms and businesses in Hong Kong still had a very kind of traditional attitude towards law. It had to be, a 1 or 2 man law firm that was round the corner that did your paperwork and that kind of thing. There's so many different ways, of course, that cultures are different. In Spain, my experience was that law firms were still a little bit behind the big Anglo-American law firms in certain ways. But then since I've left, you see a rise of legal technology, lots and lots of different businesses. I've got some good friends who work in that area in Spain. And in particular, one of the large firms there, one of the big 4 Iberian firms, Cuatro Casas, also has a legal tech accelerator. So you've still got kind of leaders in the field there. My experience generally of living in different cultures has been absolutely fantastic. From the friendly, and of course I had to learn Spanish when I was in Spain, but the friendly sort of family oriented culture of Spain, the kind of hard hitting, no nonsense business culture of Hong Kong, now back here in the UK, which in terms of creativity and innovation is an excellent place to be based.
And continuing on this line of thought about your personal journey as a lawyer and starting your own company, we have a comment from Sasha saying that there are so many individuals who are held back from starting their own businesses due to their lack of funds. And for the legal requirement being in place and the inability to draw up their own documents. So she says that she can really see the value in your offering to ease it to the people who want to pursue business ventures without the monetary backing and technical understanding of the law. Also related to that, a question by Marisa. About GDPR compliance. How do you deal with that? Are there? She would like to know if you are focusing on GDPR compliance.
Going back to the first comment, our product is great for startups that don't have funding for going about their legal tasks in any other way. There are lots of, and generally speaking, and this, not having money is always or not having funding is always makes starting a business or starting a startup extra difficult. And we were fortunate that we had. But one thing that we've done is create a platform that lets people do the documentation around that funding, so convertible notes, seed investment agreement, that kind of thing. So the one thing that you don't do when you finally raise a little bit of money is spend a lot of that little bit of money doing the legal stuff. Now going on to GDPR compliance, this is something that's doesn't affect our other markets in of course, because it's a European related issue. But for us as a business, of course, we're subject to GDPR in the UK. For us as what we do in terms of legal documentation, we'll make sure that complies with GDPR compliant requirements as far as it can. There are obviously limitations to what we can do. So, for example, GDPR is about looking at your own kind of business processes and taking an approach whereby you're probably data protection compliant anyway, but you might have to just go that little bit further in terms of collecting customers' information, that kind of thing. And each business is different, so banks have a very big job to do that they've now been doing for a couple of years. Other businesses have less of a task to do. But we've already put some articles about GDPR compliance on our platform, or we'll probably have more stuff in our help center. So hopefully we can help our customers that are that are based in the UK, or indeed customers for our other markets who want to use UK documents.
And so how about coming back to your personal journey, you changing life? What is the main difference from before and after? And what would be your recommendation for any lawyer, whether young or more experienced, who want to get involved in a legal tech, whether starting their own company or maybe collaborating? What would be your main advice and main benefits, maybe from your personal experience of jumping in this new market, new field?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I was actually I was gonna mention anyway, but it's I'll start with the positives. I mean, you know, to leave as a lawyer, generally speaking, you're a specialist, and you become more and more specialist at the area of law that you do. Now, if you're a startup founder, you have to learn a whole bunch of different skills, often from your co-founders or other people, and so therefore you have a kind of broader base. I found it very enjoyable working with people of different ages and backgrounds, and you know, our tech team and our product team and sales team and this kind of thing. It's actually been absolutely fantastic, and I don't think you get that in a law firm. For those people that are looking to do something different, I think the first thing to do is to get involved in the community, wherever that is, around legal tech. So some of you might have come across Legal Hackers, which is a kind of a group that, you know, is a meetup group that's in various cities around the world. There might be one, you know, near you. I know there's one in Madrid, in New York, where it started. In Hong Kong, I started one there. And this is basically, you know, where tech people and business people and lawyers get together and run various events. You know, you don't have to pay for it. So there's a good start. If you look in the UK, you've got Legal Geek, which is the kind of, I guess here in the UK is the number one promoter of legal technology. They run an event every year, and they're kind of, you know, at the heart of the legal tech community. You've got big law firms that, you know, like Mishcon de Reya with MDR Lab. You've got DWF with its own ventures arm that does technology through that. So there are Allen and Overy with Fuse. There's big companies that will recruit people to work in these areas. So the market for kind of legal tech jobs or people working is growing as the size of the industry grows, and it also includes jobs in traditional law firms, in places like ours, in all sorts of different businesses. Thomson Reuters, which is less of a publishing company and more of a legal tech company now, one could argue. But if you want to set up on your own, I mean, there's a few things to be wary of. I mean, if you're a senior or experienced lawyer, you're certainly going to have to take it's likely you're going to have to take a pay cut. But that's probably true if you start your own business in any industry. If you're a junior lawyer, out there and you're already looking at these sorts of things, get involved in the community, reach out to people on LinkedIn, see what the kind of leading, you know, people like Jimmy Vesberg in the UK, or, you know, even me, you know, when I do the odd article or event, to, you know, see what people are doing in this area. There was I went to an event called Legal Week Connect, which is it's a new event for lawyers back in October, and it was a lot about innovation around the law. And a law student came up to me, and he was worried about the fact that technology was going to replace lawyers' jobs. And I said to him, well, you know, even if that's the case, and certain jobs are going to be replacing, certain junior lawyers' jobs are going to be replaced by some artificial intelligence and automation, that kind of thing. He was in the right place. He's already looking at a different part of the industry. He's already getting involved in a different part of the industry. So I think it could actually be quite exciting if you're you know, studying law at the moment.
And so how about the changing life? What changed the most now for you in your new position in the startup comparing to before?
Yeah, so I mean, I alluded to before that for a start, I had to wear a suit every day. I had to go to court. I had to present cases. Now, when it's often the case when you're the co-founder in a startup, that you deal with all sorts of things. There's nothing that, you get involved in marketing, in sales, in, the business plans. There's nothing you don't get involved in. So actually you work a lot more, kind of irregular hours. Lawyers work long hours anyway, but and you're always in a startup, you're always, it's highs and lows. 1 week's a disaster, next week everything's going great.
Lots of ups and downs.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Yes, I mean, you're never far from. It's not the same. I mean, I was going to come to it later, but I suppose I'll mention it now. But in a law firm, like friends of mine that effectively stayed in the same law firm when they were trainee, junior associate, you've got a very linear career path, and you accumulate more knowledge and you earn more money as time goes on. And so actually, although you work very hard, it's relatively stable existence. And that's great. You get more, skilled at what you do. But for me, the big change was the not knowing, quite what's going to happen. I've now stopped telling my wife, for example, the things about, the financials, so that it's not a mixture of, highs and lows for her as well. There's
a lot of stress. It's a different kind of stress than the stress of a lawyer, because both of them are very stressful and very lively. But I understand from your experience, it's a different kind of stress, maybe more enjoyable given the diversity of the task that you get to do and the unexpected events you need to handle. And do you think, in what ways lawyers, the legal profession is going to change in the near future? Do you believe there's going to be a drastic change in the years to come, or do you believe it's going to be like a more of a smooth transition, if any? What are your views on that?
I think it's going to change. It's definitely going to change, especially in the large law firms, because the large law firms have money and significant amounts of money, and they want competitive advantage over their competitors. And that's one of the reasons why they get involved in, legal technology. I mentioned before, the MDR lab. DWF, is a big law firm that has a separate ventures arm, and they get involved in all sorts of technology, very creative. You've already got the rise of kind of an innovation partner in a lot of even small and medium-sized firms often have an innovation partner whose job it is to maximize, technology and efficiencies. So what I think the change is that lawyers in the profession are getting more, aware of technology. They use it more. Lawyers have always used, for years have used email and case management systems and billing systems. Now they use more, the kind of things that we use in the startup world, Basecamp and Slack and Hangouts and these sorts of things. There's more, technology used day to day. And then they have to be more innovative. They have to be. They're often now recruited to help improve the business. So this kind of rise of, I guess, innovation lawyers, or even, what people are starting to call legal engineers or non-lawyers. I mean, it's interesting. I saw a talk where they were talking about what name could you give to people who aren't solicitors in a law firm. Often they're called non-lawyers, and it's almost a dismissive term. What your legal engineers might be the way to call them. I came up with the expression solicitex for solicitors that are involved in technology, but no one seems to like it. But if anyone on this call wants to start using it, then please do. It sounds a bit cheesy.
I'm sure they are. We have Paolo saying, will there be more competition, cooperation between law firms in the future? I don't know how we can wrap up this session because the time is flying already.
Oh yeah, so I'm very sorry. Well, if anyone wants to, I mean, I had a few more things to mention.
Maybe do you want to wrap up? And we'll be happy to feature you again if you want to give another session as well. But how do you want to wrap up quickly? Maybe in a minute.
Yeah, that's true. But very quickly then, Paolo mentioned the competition. It's actually, there is more collaboration between law firms now around technology, and normally law firms hate each other. metaphorically hate each other. And there was only there was a couple more things that I was going to mention, and one was around kind of what students will have to study in the future. I'm currently working with a few universities on what's going to go in the syllabus around legal technology, so you can see where, you know, the lawyers who are studying now are potentially going to be studying technology, and then when they're in practice, they're going to be using what they studied. Finally, I'd just say, I suppose, if anyone's interested in, this really is a growing industry, and I think it's growing everywhere. You know, anywhere you look in the world, there's something going on. Of course, there's a few key hubs of technological development around law, because that's where the legal profession tends to be based. But I really think that there are ways of, even if you decide not to, say, qualify as a solicitor, you take another route. There are ways to kind of get involved in this. You can learn, coding and innovation if you really want to improve your entrepreneurship skills. But I think it's a very positive time, because we've now got a kind of we've got a mixture of lawyers who are kind of not interested in the technology, but they're eventually, of course, going to retire. And then you've got a load of new people coming through who are very interested in it, and then people like me that are kind of tie the two worlds together. So I think it's quite an exciting thing. And if anyone wants to drop me a message after this, then please do.
Yes, that would be fantastic. And
I'll do another session, Tessa.
Yeah, I was going to ask for a session specifically on the new skills for lawyers. That would be extremely interesting to have a full session on that in a future. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm sorry we have to cut the session because there's another one coming up. But really, really appreciated this conversation with you and the audience as well, who is getting very live on the chat, so that's great. We will be now continuing with Romain Dupéret, who is a partner in DWF law firm in Paris, and he will be talking about legal tech in France. So stay tuned on the YouTube live, or just connect to the other ISON digital room for the next talk, which will be starting in a minute or so. Thank you again, Chris.
No worries. And I was nice about DWF before as well, wasn't I? Very, very legal tech-oriented business.
They are very, very much.
It's a good way to finish.
Thanks you so much, Chris. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.